Hey high schoolers, it's Matt. Hey, and we are starting a new series on family. Because when it comes to your faith and your family, love matters most. Family. What do you think about when you hear that word? I think about growing up in one house with my mom and stepdad and brother and half-brother and stepbrother and two stepsisters, and another house with just me and my brother. See, my parents split when I was little, and sometimes it was overwhelming to spend time with two different families. But our time together in both homes at most point was pretty awesome. And I know that's not the case for everyone. Now with the addition of my wife's family, I have family all over the country and piles of nieces and nephews. Family time with my kids now means that they have awesome cousin time. They have 17 cousins. Maybe for you, family brings up some good things to mind. Or maybe it's exactly the opposite. For example, you hear family and you might think frustration, because your stepsister constantly acts like her time is more important than yours. Or annoyance, because your parents are super strict and give you your curfew like you've just joined the military. Or chaos, because everyone is either fighting or running around a million miles an hour. On the spectrum of awesome to awful, family is rarely in the middle, and it's awesome one minute and it can change in an instant. And our feelings about our families are not the only things that are unique to us. Our literal families also look unique. For some of you, your family means a mom and a dad. Some of you live with an aunt and uncle. Some of you are with a stepmom or stepdad, grandparents, foster parents, half siblings, or second cousins. Every family looks different. The truth is, every family is unique. No family looks the same. No family acts the same. However, every family has one thing in common. It's complicated. Family's complicated. Whenever you put a bunch of different personalities under the same roof, things can get difficult quickly. People have different opinions and preferences and needs and ways of communicating, and it's a recipe for disaster. And if I had to guess, each of us has experienced a disaster or two with our families. And what happens when disaster strikes in families? Well, as a way to deal with the madness, almost every person settles into a role that they play in the family. Think of it as your way of making your family situation work. You get a role, you play it, and it keeps things somewhat predictable and manageable. For example, some of you are the mediator in your family. You're always trying to keep the peace and make everyone happy. Some of you are the avoider. You keep your head down, you keep your mouth shut, and you mind your own business, and eventually this will just all go away. Some of you are the instigator. Every time you see something going wrong, you get in the mix, give your opinion, and let everyone know what they're supposed to do. This seemed to be my role sometimes. Some of you are the smart one. You're looked at as the brains of the family. Some of you are the rule follower. You avoid trouble, and for the most part, you do what you're supposed to do. Some of you are the comedian. You turn almost any situation, positive or negative, into a joke. The list could go on for days. But think about it. What is your role in your family? Is it one of the ones that I've listed, or is it something else? Sometimes role is influenced by where you are in the order of your siblings and step-siblings or half-siblings. Like, are you the baby of the family or the oldest? How about the middle? Are you an only child? That may affect what role you play in your family. But there's one more twist. I recognize that not all of you would say that you have an active faith in Jesus, and that's okay. You belong at Harbor Cove no matter what you believe. But for those of you that do have an active faith in Jesus, however, your faith can also add a complication to the mix when it comes to your family. Because sometimes it feels like faith and family just don't mix well at all. Maybe you feel confused because you're not sure how you're supposed to live out your faith with your family. Or you're the only Christian in your household, and because you love your family, you'd love to see them develop a faith of their own, but how can you possibly influence them in a way that isn't awkward? Or maybe your mom and your stepdad expect you to act a certain way because you claim to be Christian, and that's the certain way that Christians are supposed to act, and honestly, that's a lot of pressure. Or maybe the adults in your household, because they care about you, drag you to church or make you watch videos like this when you act out in hopes that getting some positive guidance and direction will change you. Maybe that's why some of you are even watching this today. Or maybe your faith is starting to look a little different than the people you live with. You don't want to offend anyone by disagreeing, but the truth is you don't see eye to eye with them on every aspect of faith, and that creates tension. Or maybe faith has been a part of your family for a while, but when you look at your family, you're not sure if it's working. Faith is talked about, and prayers are prayed, and church is attended, but the arguments and the tensions aren't solved. You love the people you live with, or at least like them sometimes, but it doesn't seem like faith is solving any of your complicated issues. For a lot of us, it feels like faith is one thing and family is another. They feel totally separate and that they can't help or change each other. So do your faith and your family even collide? Should they? Is that possible? And if so, what does that even look like? I want to take a look at a passage today from the book of John where Jesus is with his closest friends. Friends that after spending 3 years living and traveling with him would have probably felt more like family. And in John 13, the night Jesus is arrested and the night before he is killed, we find that Jesus is having a final meal with his friends. No one but Jesus knew that this was going to be their final meal together before everything changed. So you can imagine how complicated this must have felt to Jesus. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave his world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Just like you love your complicated family, Jesus loved his disciples. They didn't get everything right, not by a long shot, but Jesus still loved them. Knowing his time with them was coming to an end, listen to what he did. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took out his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, if you think that sounds awkward now, you have no idea how awkward it was to the disciples. Even though foot washing was a common thing back then, imagine how nasty feet got walking along dirt and on roads in sandals. Jesus was a teacher, an authority, and people in his position didn't wash other people's feet. That's what servants were for. So the disciples didn't know how to respond to Jesus' crazy act of kindness and service to him. Jesus went on to explain that one of them would betray him and told Peter in front of everyone that Peter would deny his friendship with Jesus altogether. It was a complicated moment, lots of competing emotions, and with all of that happening, Jesus tells his disciples this: "A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Jesus is saying, you remember what I did just a few minutes ago? How I acted like a servant and washed your feet? How I humbled myself? How I chose to honor you when things felt confusing and strange and complicated? How I showed my love for you then, even when it felt awkward? I want you to do that for one another and to show that kind of love and service and devotion. And by showing that kind of love to each other, everyone around you will know that you're my followers. See what I did? And then do the same. In other words, how will people know that you're a follower of Jesus? What will show people closest to you that you follow God? What will the people around see that tells them about your faith? It's simple. Love. This seems like something Jesus would say, right? But when you think about the fact that he did it after he just washed their feet, makes it extraordinary. They had no idea just how loving that act was. Jesus knew that a close friend would betray him and another close friend would deny ever even knowing him. And despite all of that, Jesus still focused on love. And he gave us an incredible example of what we're supposed to do with the people who are closest to us. We're to love. Your friends, your teachers, your strangers, and even your family will know your faith by the way that you love. In the middle of kindness that's underappreciated and misunderstood, love. In the middle of betrayal, love. In the middle of denial, love. In the middle of unfairness, love. Demonstrating love in difficulty changes you. It makes you more like Christ. And that should be the goal for all of us. God wants to use our family, the good and the bad, as something that grows our ability to love. Why? Because love is what matters most. So what does it look like to love in the middle of a complicated family situation? The Apostle Paul would later write about love and tell us. He wrote about it in what is famously known as the love chapter. It says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres." If we were to ask Jesus or Paul what faith would look like in our complicated families, I think this is what they'd say. Let your faith in Jesus move you to love the people that you live with. Love with patience, love with kindness, love in a way that honors the people around you. Love in a way that is slow to anger and doesn't keep any record of wrongs. In other words, if you want your faith to help your family, then show as much love as you can. It never fails. Think of it this way. When it comes to your faith and your family, love matters most. Trying to love this way can seem overwhelming. So here's a good way to start. Which one of these applications of love stands out to you? Which one do you need to focus on bringing your family now? Kindness, patience, or being slow to anger? These things don't make you a doormat. They allow you to be a demonstration for God. So pick one of these three things and ask God to give you the power to start demonstrating it with your family. It could mean that you start being more patient with your parents when they ask you to do something that you just don't want to do. It could mean being more kind to your siblings when they drive you nuts. It could mean not being arrogant when you think you're right or when you talk about what you believe. It could mean celebrating and affirming others when good things happen in their life instead of being angry because those things didn't happen for you. We just talked about that a couple weeks ago. It could mean not being rude to your stepmom or not being hot-tempered with your reactions with your dad. And even if you wouldn't call yourself a church person or a Jesus follower, being more kind and patient or being slow to anger will still absolutely help your family. And if you're somebody who would say you have faith, love is the best way to demonstrate it. Jesus said so himself. Now I realize this all sounds nice to hear, but I know that it's not that easy, especially within a family, to do. There's no way that I can address every complicated, unique family situation here with one video, and that's why we have small groups, to be a place where you can talk about it and process it. I know this may feel impossible, but imagine if your family could actually be better than they are now. And imagine if your faith could actually grow because of your family. We actually believe that it's possible, and we'd love for you to talk about God in your small group about it this week. Because when it comes to your family, your faith matters. And when it comes to your faith, your family matters. And when you combine these two, love matters most.